Are you wanting to talk to your kids about drugs? Well, I'm Nicholeen Peck. I teach self-government to parents and children all over the world. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about how to talk to your kids about drugs. The age of your children will depend upon how much you teach them about drugs. The general rule with things like drugs is that your children need to know more, not less. But they're not always developmentally ready for that information. So when they're young and you're talking about drugs, you're going to talk about all kinds of drugs. You're going to explain that there are drugs in your house, that there's ibuprofen and aspirin, and there's decongestant drugs, right? Sudafed and stuff. And you're going to talk about how these things alter the chemicals of your body in order to hopefully help your body heal from things. But then you'll explain that there are other drugs that will alter your body so that you actually can become damaged and that your body can be controlled and develop a habit of taking these drugs. And so you want to explain to the children that drugs are something that are respected. We don't ever take those things or touch those things without our parent giving them to us and telling us exactly what they're for. There are things that we consult doctors about. So when they're little, it's all about creating a boundary for those drugs, that we don't touch them, that we keep them away from us, because they can hurt our bodies, even though occasionally they also help our bodies. But when your children are older, at least by the time they hit junior high years, they really need to know a lot more information about drugs. So we can talk about these drugs with their street names like speed and meth and pot and whatever other fancy names there are. I'm not going to list them all. We can also talk about them with their highly scientific names. We can talk about stimulants and depressants and barbiturates and opioids and all these kinds of things. And we can explain what those words mean. But the most important thing really for your children to know by the time they're in junior high is what those chemicals do to their body and how those chemicals relate to their own feelings of contentment, joy, and even freedom in their day-to-day living. It's important that children understand the difference between a real high and a fake high. So real highs happen all the time. When a person exercises, they get a real high. When a person does an act of service or someone praises them and expresses gratitude to them, they get a real high. When you get a hug from another person, you get a real high. Why? Because oxytocin is released in the brain. And when you exercise, endorphins are released in the brain and in the body. So still you're having a chemical reaction in your body that feels exciting, joyful, and like a high, but it's natural, it's healthy, it's normal, it's good. So teach the children that when they're feeling down, there are things that they can do to feel like they get a pick-me-up. Maybe they need to go to their parents and give them a hug. Maybe they need to go on a walk or a run. Or maybe they need to accomplish something like work on a project or do some really hard labor or some hard work that will make them feel like they did something in the end. Those types of things produce chemical reactions within the body that give us a natural or real high. Speaking of a high though, that isn't really our end goal as people. We don't just want to feel elation for a minute or connection for a minute. We actually want something much deeper. We want joy. We want purpose. And that means that we have to structure our lives to be surrounded with joy and to be accomplishing things on a regular basis. So we need to teach our children not to be lazy so that then they're purposeful. We need to help them make plans for their lives. We need to fill their lives with good family connection, with truth. These will be the things that give them lasting joy and purpose and have been proven to make it so that a person is the least likely to look for drugs in order to feel better from a problem. So what about the fake high that happens when you take certain drugs? Barbiturates, depressants, uppers, downers. What about that high? That high is a manipulation. The children need to know that taking that outside chemical is creating a fake high or a manipulation to their body. And if you think of it, who likes to be lied to? In fact, when I explain to my children about the fake high, I liken it to a lie. When you take those drugs, your body thinks that something is better, when in reality, it's not. And it's usually a good idea to share stories with them, if you have them, of people you've known or you've heard of who have tried to solve their problems through these manipulated fake highs, but have consistently failed, and the problems have only gotten worse. Those stories are a dime a dozen. Share those stories with your children so that they can feel through that story what it would be like to be manipulated and to do things the wrong way. That way, they can also feel the joy and the freedom that comes with choosing not to fall for those manipulations and those lies to their bodies. Here comes the best part of our discussion. So how can we use self-government principles to help our children not do drugs in the first place? We're going to talk about that. But I just want you to know that if you want to find out more about self-government and the things that I teach related to parenting and relationships, you can find lots of information at teachingselfgovernment.com. Self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. So what does it mean to self-govern? It means that you look ahead at situations and you determine which effects you would like to have for your choices. Then you analyze yourself and see which way you keep going so that you can determine if you're on track with your goals or not. And if you find out you're not on track with your goals or you need to improve in some way, then you course correct and you align yourself with that desired outcome. So when we're talking about drugs and children, self-government is the perfect thing to keep in mind. So when a person is self-governed, they make a plan. So how do you help your children make a plan before drugs ever come into the picture or they're ever offered a drug that they will never choose to do drugs in the first place? I have to tell you a story about my son, Porter. So Porter loves sports. And there was a time when some of the sport programs in our area started getting canceled. So we took him to a new town to play sports just so that he could play basketball for one more season. Well, he loved the game of basketball, but in short time, he told me, "Mom, I really hate those practices. It's really hard to be part of that team." And I said, "Why, Porter? What's going on?" And he said, "Well, those kids are doing things they should not do." Then one night, he came out from practice and he said, "Well, I got offered drugs tonight, Mom, but I told them that they should stop talking to people like this and that they are ruining their team and that I'm going to have to report that they talked to me about that." And I said, "Wow, Porter, that's great." He said, "Yep, I decided early on when I met these kids that if they ever came to me and told me that they wanted me to do drugs or offered them to me, then I would turn them in." And I thought, wow, here's his teammates. He's going to turn in his own teammates because he feels like it's in their best interest and in everybody else's best interest. How did he know that that would be the best decision to make? Because we'd talked about it. Porter and I had a discussion at the very beginning of his time with this team when we recognized that these boys on this team were different than some of the boys on other teams that he'd been part of before. He saw that some of them were probably engaged in activities that he would not participate in. They talked about things that our family would consider to be not appropriate conversation, even for adults to talk about. So then we had a discussion about substance abuse and about drugs, and what if these boys were involved with that? Well, Porter said, "Mom, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they are." And so then I said, "Well, then what are you going to do if you find out for sure?" He said, "Well, Mom, I think I need to have a plan for if they offer me drugs." And I said, "I think that's a good idea. What do you think a responsible person does?" And all on his own, he said, "I think I would have to turn them in, Mom, and tell them they're doing the wrong thing." I was so proud of him. You know, we actually homeschooled in our family, so my children weren't around drugs all the time like some children are. But he knew, 100% knew, that someone had to be strong enough to tell that person the truth about the behavior they were engaging in and try to protect the other children from getting engaged in those risky behaviors too. Porter was empowered because he had made a plan. He had chosen ahead of time how he was going to handle this drugs problem before it even was in front of him. He planned for what feelings he might have, for what feelings he might encounter, maybe social pressure, peer pressure, he thought to himself, what could it feel like when a person suggests drugs to me? What will I do with those feelings? Will I get caught up in them? Will I want to be included with the group that already isn't including me? Because that was definitely happening. And he decided, no, I'm not going to pay attention to those feelings. Instead, I am going to already know what I will choose. I will choose not to do those drugs, and I will choose to say these words. The power of self-government is knowing that your ability to choose trumps everything else that is going on around you. It's that power to choose that empowers a person instead of leaving them in a position where they might be manipulated by their circumstances and the other people around them. Part of being a really self-governed person is having a growth mindset. If you've enjoyed this video, I'm pretty sure you're going to like my next video, which is how a growth mindset can improve love or family relationships. Check that video out now. We'll see you there.